Society builders paved the way to a better world, to a better day. A united approach to building a new society. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. Woo.
Society Builders with your host, Dwayne Varon.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Society Builders, and thanks for joining the conversation for social transformation. Now, allow me to start today's episode with a bit of a bird's eye view of where our journey together has been navigating us to over the past year or so. In episodes 18 and 19, we began exploring one of the fundamental pillars of society building: engaging with the prevalent discourses of society. We explored what this means, particularly from a Baha'i perspective, and we discussed strategies for effectively engaging with such discourse. Now, I then wanted to take us on a journey exploring a specific discourse. And here, of course, I focused on the contemporary issues associated with the rampant polarization that is currently plaguing the world. I did this so we could explore what discourse looks like, how we engage with a new discourse. Now, I could have focused on any number of other discourse themes: the environment, race unity, the empowerment of women. I mean, these are all great examples of discourses that Baha'is would normally engage with. And in due course, we'll explore all of these and more. But I chose the polarization focus here specifically for a number of reasons. First, it was something I knew absolutely nothing about. In fact, I remember being blown away when I read reference to the need for us to bring antagonistic people closer together, thinking, how on earth do you do that? And that was exactly what I wanted: a challenge I knew nothing about, so that we could together go through the process of engaging with a new discourse from scratch. An authentic journey similar to the ones you will face when you encounter new discourse themes. Second, it had an urgency to it that was reflected repeatedly in guidance from the Universal House of Justice, who described the world situation today as polarized and paralyzed, with prejudices polarizing societies at a time when unity is more vital to resolving local, national, and global challenges, calling on us to resist the pull of controversial and polarizing debates. And this guidance is a reflection on the extent to which polarization has emerged as one of the dominant issues of our day all over the world. So the gravity of this particular theme seemed particularly urgent. This is front and center with Baha'u'llah's advice that we engage with the needs of the age in which ye live in. And polarization clearly meets that test. It responds to one of the most critical needs of this age. Third, polarization intersects at the very heart of the mission of Baha'u'llah. I mean, bringing antagonistic groups together, that's exactly what we're about. It's the ultimate expression of the unifying power of the faith. Fourth, it's foundational. And what I mean by this is that learning how to address polarization is a skill that helps us in just about any other discourse we engage with, because almost all modern discourse will require this capacity for us to help bring people together. So gaining new skills and insights around depolarization helps lay a foundation for our capacity to engage effectively with other discourse themes. And finally, I felt it was an arena that had great opportunity for engaging and collaborating with others and with like-minded organizations. And here specifically, this view was shaped by reading the work of Neil Parker, who features in episode 27, who together with her research team at Princeton University has identified over 6,700 organizations in the U.S. alone working to find paths to depolarization. So this was the underlying rationale for the polarization focus. And what we've been doing from episode 20 onwards has been getting ourselves up to speed on the scientific knowledge that exists in the existing discourse. This is where we should always start, by reading society, listening, and coming to terms with the existing discourse. And here we've been incredibly fortunate to learn directly from the leading luminaries in the world in this discourse. And so today, and over the next few episodes, we're going to try to bring some synthesis to what we've been learning from these amazing individuals and from their research and experience. And in that context, we're going to try to explore how this relates to Baha'i perspectives and how we might bring new contributions to the discourse at present. Now, that's an incredibly tall order, well beyond my capacity for sure. So we won't get it perfectly right, and it won't be comprehensive, but we can at least scratch the surface here and explore some possibilities to at least demonstrate the potential of such an approach. So today, we start exploring Baha'i perspectives towards depolarization. Now, once again, I need to offer a bit of a disclaimer here to remind you that I speak with no authority here. This podcast is a personal initiative. It does not necessarily reflect the views of any Baha'i agency. So you should weigh the ideas here for yourself. Again, my voice is no more important than your voice, so explore all this at your own risk. And an added caution. It's far too premature to argue that anything could be a true Baha'i perspective on depolarization. In the same way that we don't really yet have something akin to Baha'i art or Baha'i music or even Baha'i education for that matter, we definitely don't have a distinctive approach to this issue of polarization. So I use the term Baha'i perspective here in a very broad sense and not in any kind of official sense. It's more that we're exploring Bahá'í-inspired approaches to depolarization. And one final disclaimer. We explore this theme of depolarization with a focus on what we can do and not on what we might expect others to do. In other words, we're not talking here about social policy or workplace law or anything macro. We're talking about the things we can do in our own lives, in our interaction with those in our orb. What we can do directly to help remedy polarization by integrating Baha'i-inspired approaches. Okay, so with those clarifications, let's embark upon our little journey here. Now, rather than go through a linear review of each of our recent episodes, I thought I'd weave across the interviews to pull out some key themes and explore how Baha'i approaches might contribute to these strands of the larger depolarization discourse. Our approach won't be comprehensive, it'll be illustrative. In other words, I won't cover everything we've learned, but I'll pull out a few key insights to explore how we might integrate Baha'i-inspired perspectives. And specifically, we're going to explore just 5 of the key principles that have emerged across these interviews. These are 5 of the most important principles that grow out of the research on the science of depolarization. And for each of these, we're going to explore how Baha'i perspectives might contribute to advancing the discourse further. And so over the next few episodes, we're going to explore these 5 themes, including forces that act as an accelerant to polarization and what we can do to help prevent that influence in our own lives and how to safeguard against ourselves adding fuel to the fire. How polarization dehumanizes the other and what we can do to help rehumanize the equation. How we can enhance our capacity to listen and understand, which are critical to effective depolarization. How we can help break binaries, narratives that reduce problems to conflict between 2 opposing forces. And finally, how we can enhance the environments under which contact between antagonistic groups are facilitated. Now again, This doesn't cover everything we've learned, but I think it's good ground for us to cover, which will help illustrate how Baha'i perspectives can contribute to this discourse. So that's our game plan. And obviously, that's too much for us to cover in a single episode. So we'll cover this ground across a few episodes. So let's dig in. Now, polarization is a social pollutant. Just like there might be toxic particles in the air we breathe, if we live in society, if we interact with society, we're going to contract this toxic polarization in our everyday lives. It doesn't matter that we don't approve of it, that it's not compatible with our beliefs. If we live in society, we're going to breathe in toxic polarization every day. So we can't stop it, but we can certainly limit its influence. But this requires that we become more aware, better sensitized to it. And this requires active reflection. Reflection on what we breathe in, what we inhale, but also reflection on what we exhale on our actions. Because as we become contaminated, we can also accelerate and add fuel to the polarization disease, despite our best intentions. So we start our discussion on strategies to depolarize with a focus on ourselves. This is not about what others should or shouldn't do. It's about you. It's about me and what we can do to both limit the toxically polarized pollutants coming in, but also to regulate our own behavior so we don't further contribute to the problem. Now, our guests on these podcasts have been really helpful in helping us understand this dynamic. I think the most common space where most of us interact with this kind of toxic polarization is in our social media spheres. Now, in episode 26, Dr. Lisa Shurik did an amazing job in helping us understand how polarization in social media is not coincidental. It's not an accident. It's the byproduct of very deliberate strategies designed to maximize profit for the social media platforms and a function of the work of chaos actors, often from foreign adversaries actively working to undermine social structures by cultivating divisions. So remember, other things being equal, if you have a credible social media post and a highly polarized version of the same post, the algorithms on these social media platforms will favor the polarized and further propagate these over the credible. So the system is rigged to polarize. Now, there are larger conversations to be had about social policy around all of this, but for now, I'd like us to focus on what this means for us in our own daily lives. Now, let's pause here for a second. Just for a moment, I'd like you to think about the dramatic social transformation that has played out over the past 2 decades or so, where we have become so much more aware of our food diets. Today, when you go to a fast food restaurant and order a burger and fries, you are keenly aware of how many calories there are in what you order. Maybe that encourages you to order small fries instead of large ones. And when you're at the supermarket buying your groceries, you pick up a can and look to see what its ingredients are. And maybe you pick the item that has less trans fat, for example. So we become a lot more conscious and discerning and aware of what we eat. We still eat bad things, right? But we're just a lot more aware of what we're eating. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, we regulate our behavior armed with that knowledge. Now, our social media consumption is a lot like our food diet. It's our media diet. And just like we've become more aware of our calorie intake and the ingredients we ingest, we also need to become more aware of the polarized content we consume. And continuing on with the interview with Dr. Shurik, I think what she really helped us understand here is that what these corporations and what these foreign chaos actors are preying on is what she called our reptile brain. I loved this part of the interview. In fact, let me remind you of that part of the episode.
So really, neuroscience is behind a lot of conflict behavior. When human beings can sit down calmly and breathing regularly, we can solve problems together. We can disagree about issues, but we can maintain a sense of human dignity, relationship with others. And we have our prefrontal cortex. I'm pointing to my forehead right now. We have this amazing brain as humans that can link up with other people's brains and figure out creative solutions to problems. And really, that's what conflict resolution, conflict transformation, peace building, that's what that's all about, is trying to create a setting, a condition where people can be their best selves and work with other people to find creative solutions to problems. So as a mediator, for example, I'm used to sitting in a room with people who are very angry with each other, disagreeing with something. And it's my job as a mediator to lead them through a process of moving from the reptile part of their brain in the back bottom of the brainstem and trying to sort of create enough safety in the room that they can come up to their forehead where their thinking brain is, where they can actually solve problems together. And so even before all this social media, I think neuroscience really underlies a lot of the process of conflict transformation, moving from just an emotional response to be able to think and be mindful of our ability to solve problems together. So I think when you think about neuroscience and social media, there's a few things happening. It's showing us the emotional content, which keeps us at that brainstem. My colleagues at the Center for Humane Technology call it the race to the bottom of the brainstem on social media. So it's this race to show us the most outrageous emotional content to keep us engaged at an emotional level.
Now, I love this way of framing the problem. Polarization fields the reptile portion of our brain. It's this race to the bottom of our brainstem. And that in turn is addictive. And our challenge neurophysiologically is to instead feed the more human, the rational dimensions of our brain. Now, in Bahá'í terminology, this is what we call the struggle between our lower and our higher natures, between our animal self and our divine self, between our material and spiritual self. Abdu'l-Baha describes how this lower self is captive to nature and how our higher self transcends this all. And the whole beauty of the human story is that we are creatures endowed with free will. So we decide which version of ourselves to empower. This reminds me of that story I know you've all heard. It's the story of a Cherokee chief explaining to his grandson that there are two wolves in all of us, one evil and dark and one noble and good. The grandson then asks, which wolf wins? To which the grandfather replies, it's the one you feed. The one you feed. And this is where our reflection and vigilance become so important in understanding which self we're feeding with our media diets. Now, this isn't limited to social media. The same kind of communication diet is also true in our interpersonal interactions with others. When you're angry with someone and want to vent, who do you turn to? You could turn to the friend you have who will likely get you to pause, reflect, calm down, get you questioning whether you really need to be so angry. Or you can turn to the friend who you know will agree with your anger, reinforce it, make you feel justified, feed your anger. So, which friend do you turn to? And if we're being honest here, there's a good probability that we'll turn to that second friend because it feels good. It vindicates our anger. It justifies it. It makes us feel right to be angry. While it feels good, it's probably not the most productive response. And this is what both Amanda Ripley in episode 20 and Dr. Peter Coleman in episode 21, this is what they were describing in our attraction to conflict entrepreneurs, people who are really good at feeding and inflaming our anger, at weaving polarized reaction, at reinforcing our sense of being victimized. You're looking for someone to reinforce your sense of anger, and they're there to gratify. Now, in this context, this often feels good. But again, that doesn't mean it's productive. In fact, it's probably making the situation worse. So just as we need to be discerning in our social media encounters, we also have to be discerning in who we confide in who we turn to in our moments where our emotions flare up. And of course, we need to be on double duty on these occasions, not allow all of this to deteriorate into an opportunity for backbiting. Enough said, right? Okay, so whether we're talking about social media or interpersonal interaction, we need to be vigilant so that we're minimizing our contact with forces that will feed and inflame polarization. We need to feed our higher nature to rise and transcend above this all so we are less a creature of our rampant emotions and we can better channel our divine selves. And there's another side to this equation, and that's that we also need to be on guard lest we become an agent of polarization ourselves, despite our best intent. You read a social media post, it angers you, your emotions get triggered, and you immediately post a reply that you later realize has only further inflamed the problem. It's critical that at those moments, we pause and wait before posting a reply so that our emotions can settle down a bit and that we bring the voice of wisdom and not just the voice of our emotion to our response, if a response is even merited. And as we discussed in our interview with Dr. Schirak, it's much easier to have this kind of uncalibrated response online than it is in person. Because when you say something to someone in person, you see their reaction to your words, and that reaction is often disarming. You see that your words are making a person sad, for example, and so you temper your response. But online, it's easy to become indifferent to such response, so we become more callous, less sensitive, and more likely to further fan the flames. Again, a number of our guests talk about this need for self-reflection over our own actions. Let's remind ourselves here of what Amanda Ripley shared with us in episode 20.
Yeah, I think it's important for me to first acknowledge that we all can be conflict entrepreneurs. And this is actually one of the things that Gary reached out to me when the book first came out, and he heard me on the radio and he was like, yeah, just be careful with that because you might create a whole new us versus them. And so I do try to remind myself that every day I just wake up and try not to be a conflict entrepreneur, because especially on social media, but even in just around the office or in your neighborhood, it is easy to do that. It's a way to bond with people by complaining or blaming someone else.
And I really love the stories that Gary Friedman shared with us in episode 22 about his own journey. Here was one of the world's leading mediator trainers explaining how he slipped up. He's sharing the story here of his engagement with local governance in his own small locality. Let's listen in.
We had problems in the community. People said, we need somebody to run the meetings. I said, I know how to run meetings where there's conflict. And great. So they elected me in a landslide. And then
this was to the local council.
Our local 250 houses right on the ocean in California. And my idea was, let's get the whole community involved. And so all the people that voted for me come to the meetings. It's your community. And of course, one of the great surprises, two surprises, neither of them should have been. One was they didn't come. because they thought they'd elected me, I would do that. And secondly, the people that were against me, they came to every meeting and they just started taking pot shots at me right off the bat. Well, as a mediator, I was used to really heavy conflict. Horrible things would happen in the room, but it was never aimed at me. And this was aimed at me. And as the me, what came back into my life was the old trial lawyer. I knew how to defend and attack. And before I knew it, I was off and running. And everything I believed in about how people should be with each other, I was contradicting from, moment to moment. And it was a terrible experience because I was defensive and I got kind of, I wouldn't say drunk with power, but kind of, I loved the idea of having power. I kind of hadn't had it. As a mediator, I give it away. So I'm happy. But this was kind of intoxicating. We can make real change. And of course, that was, seeds of destruction right there, and created a we-them relationship between me and the people that were against me. And so I went through a really horrible period where my wife said to me, she'd come to the meetings with the dog and then leave after a while. And at one point she said to me, I don't even recognize you. This is not the person that I've been with for the last 40 some odd years. This is some old version of you. And so I really took that to heart because I knew that she was right. And she always is right. And so I went through a period of deep soul searching.
So if this can happen to Gary Friedman, one of the world's leading experts in this arena and a really, really nice guy, I mean, if it can happen to Gary, it can happen to us too, right? So this speaks to Baha'u'llah's admonishment that we be guarded in our speech. Baha'u'llah refers to human utterance as an essence which aspireth to exert its influence and needeth moderation. And he enjoins his followers to speak with words as mild as milk, in a matter consistent with our station of true understanding and nobility. So this is painting a picture, right, of us being highly aware and conscious of the potential impact of our expression, of aspiring for nobility in our manner of expression. And the Universal House of Justice, I think, gives us this incredibly sharp focus with these words. They say, we return to the phenomenal characteristics of speech. Content, volume, style, tact, wisdom, timeliness are among the critical factors in determining the effects of speech for good or evil. Consequently, the friends need ever to be conscious of the significance of this activity, which so distinguishes human beings from other forms of life, and they must exercise it judiciously. Their efforts at such discipline will give birth to an etiquette of expression worthy of the approaching maturity of the human race. Wow. It is precisely this etiquette of expression which we so desperately need at this critical juncture. Content, volume, style, tact, wisdom, and timeliness. But until this etiquette evolves, we can at least aspire to it in our own conduct. So we've talked about both the information we ingest and our expression. And I know that this can be nuanced and complicated at times. At the end of the day, it's a skill. And fortunately, this is something we can train for. As I shared in episode 21, Dr. Peter Coleman has developed a course, a challenge only requiring a few minutes of your time over a 21-day period, designed to help sensitize us to our own threats to polarization. And I've included a link to this in this episode's description. Or As Gary Friedman explained in episode 22, you can complete his 40-hour course at understandinginconflict.org. And in due course, I'm sure there will be Baha'i Institute courses that you'll also be able to join. But I wanted to remind you of the very precious gift that we have to help us navigate through this terrain, a gift that is here and now that will help you today, immediately. And here, of course, I'm talking about the example of Abdu'l-Baha. In fact, that's our shorthand. Anytime we're not certain, either in terms of the content we're exposed to or our own expression, the test is super simple. Just imagine that Abdu'l-Baha is there with you. And if you're okay with what you're hearing, reading, writing, or saying, then sally forth, you're good. But if you're embarrassed, then something is probably not quite right, and you should probably adjust accordingly. This is an incredibly powerful tool which gives us immediate access to the voice of our conscious, which more than anything can help us navigate the challenges of our times. So this is your emergency plan. When in doubt, visualize Abdu'l-Baha in your presence, and that will help you weigh your words. Now, we've run out of time for today, and we only got through the first of our 5 key themes, connecting what we've learned from the science of depolarization together with Baha'i principles. So we have 4 themes to go, which will probably take us a couple of episodes to cover. But it's exciting stuff, right? So thanks again for joining the conversation for social transformation. I look forward to continuing our exploration of Baha'i approaches to depolarization. That's next time on Society Builders.
Society builders paved the way to a better world, to a better day. A united approach to building a new society. There's a crisis facing humanity. People suffer from a lack of unity. It's time for a better path to a new society. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. So engage with your local communities and explore the exciting possibilities. We can elevate the atmosphere in which we move. The paradigm is shifting. It's so very uplifting. It's a new beat, a new song, a brand new groove. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. The Baha'i faith has a lot to say, helping people discover a better way with discourse and social action framed by unity. Now the time has come to lift the game and apply the teachings of the greatest name and rise to meet the glory of our destiny. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders. Join a conversation for social transformation. Society builders.